none other than our very own Bobby Varanasi. Thank you very much for joining us today, Bobby.
Thank you very much, Nordin, for having me. It's been a while. Appreciate it.
Exactly. Even though we are in the same city, not far from each other, we've still got to go virtual by virtue of the MCO that we're experiencing here in KL and Malaysia. But really appreciate your time today, and we're kind of excited to learn a little bit more about everything. Every time I meet you, I always have a pen because I always take notes because I always learn so much from you. It's really good to have one of the global leaders in this field, just down the road here in KL. But I wanted to start by asking you a few questions.
Sure.
Firstly, when we talk about COVID-19, when we talk about everything, and of course you're from India, and we see some terrible scenes, and we hope your family is okay. But we see this massive and rapid digitization. Is that your belief as someone who's in the industry, who's driving that change? Is that really happening, or is it something that we just perceive as happening?
You hit the nail on it. First of all, Nordin, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the kind words. To the question, digitization and the digitalization piece. So obviously we need to make a distinction between the two. Digitization has been happening for over a decade anyway. Digitalization has been happening for well over 5 years now. And I think the developing world, if I were to broadly classify all our ASEAN countries, India, Africa, Latin America, everybody's been on the bandwagon for a while now. It's been 5 years. It's not new. What is new is the amount of marketing it got thanks to this COVID. Unfortunately or fortunately, let's look at it that way. Mm-hmm. The virus has brought to the forefront the level of applications that the digital solutions can actually be, put to play. More importantly, it is the acceptance of the marketplace. Think of it in 2019. It was almost an enterprise level conversation. Digitalization was very enterprise level conversations. Very few people really understood it unless it was, for example, a Grab or a Food Panda, right? Because there was no touch points with the B2C side of the business. B2B has been happening for a while. But the virus really opened up to all people appreciating the actual value digital solutions bring to the table. And I think that is the beauty of it, right? Today, we did not need to spend, $20 billion in marketing to tell people digital solutions are to be trusted. The virus helped us do it. That's how I look at it. So I think, if you
cool.
logic is great, right? Huge applicability going forward as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Are companies getting there, and are governments also able to deliver on the infrastructure that's required? We can talk about, for me, I always like to think this one idea is like, well, we need to worry about the economically important first if you're driving your economy, those in urban centers and these kind of things. In the sense of Malaysia, in the sense of ASEAN, is that the strategy, or is it a strategy of, okay, everyone needs to have access to data, and what's the difference?
So, three views, right? All of them are complementary. The industry doyens, right, from the research firms to the foundations to your think tanks will say, this has to be done. We know that. Governments have followed suit and said, okay, we also understand and appreciate its value, and we've got to lay down strategies. So, Malaysia is not unfamiliar with perhaps 48 different frameworks that we have developed on the back of a digital footprint, right? Whether it's a smart city framework, whether it's an urban blueprint framework, whether it's an AI framework, a data analytics framework. We've been doing this for 5 years. It's not new. So governments are in the right place. Consumer perception and adoption has accelerated only in the last 40 odd months in terms of what real value can be created. Having said that, our corporations, of course they are, but they are not responding to COVID style or COVID related, wants as much as they are looking at the sustenance of their own models. I think we have to be very cautious in trying to overplay the consequence of COVID, right? Not many companies, and Malaysia is, you can see it, right? It is not necessarily translated to a long-term strategy. We are responding to what we need to do immediately, and they are driven by three goals: sustenance, balance sheets, and jobs. For a private sector, it's sustenance and balance sheets. That's all. They don't really care about jobs, but let's be honest about it, right? Government's absolutely concerned about jobs, and Malaysian government has done phenomenal, right? Almost 150 billion that they've outlaid in a variety of programs, penjanas of the world, that this cannot continue for long. At some point, we will have to make fundamental shifts. Are we ready for that yet? Maybe not. Do we need to do it? Absolutely, yes. So we are sitting right now on that fence of choosing to go back to the old model, which is our comfort zone, versus the new model. But the issue, I think, is everybody accepts the new model, but they don't want to take the leap of faith. They're waiting for someone else.
Yes.
And that's
now,
what
Bobby. Now, Bobby, we've got Michael Warren. Of course, you know Michael, and he's very well known in the industry. He's only asked us two difficult questions. Thank you, Michael, for that. Bobby, what can Malaysia learn from India in the digital implementation during COVID-19 times? And Michael's asked me, how do we work with the political structures? We work with them in a very nice manner. But I think all jokes aside, on the political side of things, I think there is a political imperative to deliver broadband to everybody. I think broadband is the new water. If you don't have water or electricity, you're impoverished. If you don't have broadband, you're digitally impoverished. So I think there is an understanding, with the recent digital blueprint, and I know people have said a lot of different things around that recent release. But I think that there is a real drive from the government, from the top down, to hit that kind of new reality. I think it's going to take 5 years, to be honest. What are your ideas? And we got to answer Michael's question.
We will, absolutely. So let's take Michael's question first with respect to India and get it out of the way. Hey, Michael. Hello again. So what India has done has nothing to do with COVID. What India has done over the last decade, at least, is two things. A realization amongst a lot of individuals who transform themselves into entrepreneurs. These are all the guys who have come out of the Accentures, the IBMs, the TCS of the world, the traditional, butts on seats service models. And they've realized that, there's so much that they can do, but they're constrained by the organizations that they are employed by. But their marketplace was local. They realized that there's a 1.3 billion, people out there with pockets and pockets, millions of pockets of solutions to be created, but nobody's doing it. They have access to the money, they have access to the competence. Creating skills is not a problem. It's not complex. So what you've seen happening in India last 7 years is that emergence of a phenomenal level of entrepreneurship that were about solving local problems. I'll take a pot shot here at Southeast Asia, and I will not name countries. We try to do the same thing, but what we have done is we have tried to replicate successful models of the West, and we lost the plot. Absolutely, we lost the plot. What India did not do, and I think phenomenal stuff, is they said, what, we've got problems to solve locally. We got millions of consumers who will come and buy it so long as we can solve them. That is why today an average disbursement is about $2 million of disbursement of private capital happening in India every single day. Every single day. Here, our largest venture capital fund is probably $40 million in size. And let's be realistic, right? Money chases value. And value has to be localized and then, of course, enhanced. So to Michael's question on the India thing, why did India get it right? They focused on what needs to be solved. We focused on replication. And I think that's where we missed the plot. Now let's take the other question on what we need to do in terms of political structures. I think we have too many frameworks. Out of 70 years, I would think, and having spent a lot of time in Malaysia, is government, you're a great enabler, but step away from telling us what to do. Let us fail. Let the entrepreneurs fail. I have hardly seen a Malaysian entrepreneur or a Southeast Asian entrepreneur in a few other countries who has ever had the fear of failure. And that's what happens when I'm very candid here and somebody's going to shoot me later is what it does is it promotes mediocrity. And it unfortunately, as a democratic nation, a government is constrained to support everybody. I don't blame Malaysian government for doing what it's exactly doing. It's supporting everybody. But if we are not able to sift between excellence and mediocrity, we are putting the right money in the wrong place. And in most cases, as we know, we have nothing to show for. So we've got to be extremely conscious of saying, let's pick our battles and let's find the right guys for it. If it means rejecting 90 out of the 100 guys, so be it. Maybe we have been too nice, if you ask me, right? But an entrepreneur chases value. It doesn't really matter whether he gets a support or not. And an investor likes that entrepreneur who chases value. But if an entrepreneur is chasing grants, I think we've missed the boat.
Of course, you sit on many of those grant-giving bodies and help sift through that. But I think one of the things that I see is that I think also you talk about this idea of permission to fail, and actually during those failures you actually learn a lot. And I liked what you said earlier about chasing value. Because when we only look at the money that we can generate here in Malaysia, I think we're missing the boat as well. We've got to think ASEAN-wide, we've got to think global. Where do we get all that money to come here? I know one of the words that we always talk about is almost this becoming a hub, and that kind of replication approach may not be the way forward.
Precisely. I'll take an example from another part of the world to illustrate exactly what you're saying, Nordin. There is Colombia in America. And the only thing that strikes us is Pablo Escobar, right? Everyone who's watched it. We have no clue about what Colombia does other than the fact that it is the drug capital of the world for the better part of 53 years and a whole lot of civil wars. They are today one of the biggest innovation centers outside of the US when it comes to the Americas and Europe. What did they do differently? There are 7 cities, like how we have a Penang and a Johor and a KL and a PJ. They have 7 cities. But the strategy that the Colombian government adopted way back in 2012, when we started advising them, I'm not saying that we did anything much, but we were one of those millions of probably people who worked with them, was they said, let's go and figure out what are we good at. It's a pretty large country, pretty desperate as well, right, given their history. But they built skills, and they said, we are going to create competence centers, for want of a better term. It's not necessarily a center, but we will leverage skills from a Cali or from a Medellin or from a Bogota or from a Cartagena that specifically relate to what these guys are great at. So if I were to flip that same conversation and say, we know exactly what Penang is good at, electronics, semiconductors, blah, blah, blah. We've gotten that right. Do we know what Johor is good at? Do we really know what Johor is good at? Right? Yeah. Or do we know what a Muar or perhaps a Perlis is good at? We haven't figured that out. Colombia did exactly that. And what they did is they went to the world. So they had a little bit of I would say, a distributed and fairly autonomous approach toward foreign direct investments. It was not the federal government going all the time and saying, come and invest in Colombia. The Medellin guys went into Europe, right? The Cali guys went into Mexico. So they were all allowed to do that, whether they were allowed or they chose to do it. What they did was to be able to attract the right guys to the right place at the right time. So today they are sitting on an industry, like for example, the GBS industry that they created in 6 years, it took us 20 years to create. I'm not kidding you. These are real numbers. I won't throw the numbers around. I don't want to insult anyone. No. These are facts that we can learn from. And this is Colombia, right? It's about 4,000 miles away from here. Perhaps for us.
Where are they on the map, right? Nobody thinks about Colombia.
I think we need to pick those battles. We are great at many things. I see Malaysia is phenomenal at so many things. But are we really even putting in a paper and saying, these are the top 10, I'm going to fight these 2 battles for the next 3 years. Forget everything else, because everything else will come through as a spillover. Because if you're great at something else, somebody else will come for you and say, you know what, I think you can do that as well. Maybe we're trying to bite more than we can chew, Nordin. That's what I would like to think as.
Okay, that's interesting. Of course, there's some comments about Miss India universe and all these things. Thank you for those. Of course, Bobby has a lot more experience than that wonderful lady. But Bobby, the other thing that, I mean, both you and I sit on the Malaysia-Australia Business Council. And a shout out to all our fellow council members. And we see a lot of trade and investment going between Australia and Malaysia. One of the things that when we use this word innovation, we need to be innovative. We need to be innovating on these things. I grew up in 2 settings in Australia, a rural setting as well as an urban setting. So when I think of innovation in Australia, I don't think of some science lab rat guy. I think of a really clever farmer who sorted out a way to fix a problem with his cows or his problem with dealing with sheep. Is that what you're talking about? What are our problems? Are they going to be big enough that global money comes in? Because now, if you solve that problem, I mean, I'm thinking palm oil here. If we solve, the problem of 2 billion ringgits worth of palm oil kernels that land on the ground that no one ever picks up, that's like 2 new billionaires a year. I mean, it just, is that what you're talking about in terms of find out problems, innovate on those, not try to be an India or China or this kind of stuff?
You hit the nail on the head, Nordin. Absolutely. Right. I'm a diver and I go to some of those most obnoxious places on the planet, right, including Malaysia. And you get to see stuff and, you leave KL 40 kilometers away. You are in 1970s. You're not in 2021. That's fact of life. But you see enterprising individuals. See, that's the beauty. There are enterprising individuals, the guy on a boat, who's ferrying you from one island to the other, or that lady who has got a small little plot of land, probably, the size of a dining table, and she's being innovative about what she's producing, given and there's a lady I spoke with, a 70-year-old lady, and this is somewhere near Kuantan, up north, and she actually ensures that she's planting the right vegetables during the right time of the year, depending upon the amount of rainfall. Now, unfortunately, climate change may have messed up her plans, but that's a 70-year-old lady who never went to school in her life. This is a Malaysian lady. Now, these are the kind of people, are we able to tap into? You're spot on. That kernels that you talk about, what can I do with them? See, there was a beautiful conversation about, I think a month or 2 ago, and I think as part of the My Digital umbrella, there is a discussion around circular economy. Nobody knows what it means. Nobody knows how to do it. Now, take that kernel example. There is circularity possible. What could we not do with it? Now, you need a bunch of guys who are not from the palm oil industry to actually come and tell you where could the utility value be for those discarded kernels after the fruit is taken away. It cannot be the guys from the industry telling you what to do. But are we therefore collaborating? Are we therefore inviting people who are radically different in their thinking? We don't need to go anywhere. That's exactly what you're seeing happening in India. That's what you're seeing happening in Vietnam, very interestingly. You're seeing that happen in Nigeria today, and in Kenya as well, and South Africa. These are the 5 countries you would like to think that they are worse than us economically and everything else. But the level of circular economies that are being created in these countries is phenomenal. And all we have is frameworks. And that's what sometimes points me, but huge opportunity for us to go after. So when we talk about, say, the models, we talk about the enabler models, whether it's a VC ecosystem, a crowdfunding ecosystem, do they really know what they are wanting to fund in the first place? Or they're looking at every idea in its own merit without the applicability and implication on the overall economy? I think we have disassociated the growth of the nation and its future from the modernity of an idea. I think we have. This is my personal view. And therefore, we are investing a lot of good money in good ideas. I'm not saying the ideas are bad, but their utility value, it's probably got a shelf life of 1 year or 2 years. And that's a problem.
Now, when we talk about, I mean, what I just want to round that up and say what we need to look at is go beyond good ideas and get to the great ideas that leverage off the strength of the country. Now, Michael's asked us another question. Thank you, Michael. You're grilling us today like a headmaster. I always love to bump into Michael, and I really want to get him on the show as well. But he's rightfully pointed out you're listed as and recognized as one of the top 25 outsourcing people in the world, and you've chosen Malaysia as your base for really the last decade or so. Why have you done that, and what is the success story there?
Right. Thanks, Michael. Well, none of this is providential or very well thought out. I started my firm back in the States, and some of my conversations, I started my firm only because I realized at that point that governments like Malaysia being at the forefront, Kenya, Colombia, Nigeria, Ghana, you name it, all of these countries, were investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in going to the Western world, particularly the United States, attending conferences and seminars and creating a whole bunch of what I would call as inward missions, right? Michael, I'm sure you understand what it means. And trying to attract investors to come and invest in these countries. But the industry in itself, the buyers are the buyers, the vendors really didn't give a damn, and the advisors were not caring about it as well enough to say, what do these countries need to understand and appreciate about the nuances of the industry beyond the fact that there is money and there are jobs, right? The country is coming in to say, rightly so, if there is money to be had, if we can create an industry quickly and it can create jobs and tax revenues, it's wonderful. And I think that's exactly what Malaysia did. I realized very quickly that speaking to all of these countries, nobody's helping them. So when I started my firm, I chose to work with the developing world governments. And of course, thankfully, over the last 15 years, we've advised 11 of them, including Malaysia. The reason why I chose Malaysia was, one, it was extremely aggressive at that point in terms of saying, look, we can lay down a red carpet. All we're looking for is some skills, some capabilities, and obviously, jobs, etc. And as we went through, why I decided to stay, Michael, is what the Malaysian government's promise of actually enhancing and growing that industry was. And I think MDEC and MOSTI at that point, I guess, when MDEC was part of MOSTI, have done a phenomenal job. And that allowed me to stay back and see how a developing country of the order of Malaysia is doing stuff. So there's so much to learn, right? And then you can also always translate that knowledge into less endowed countries. Like we've advised Nigeria, we've advised Kenya. So it's cross-pollination, right? And I love this place. The wife is sitting right here. She loves Malaysia. So if the house is happy, if the wife is happy, the home is happy. But that's the long and short of it, Michael. But the deeper story anyway.
Yeah. Of course, my wife is from Malaysia, and I agree with you. Always keep her happy wherever she's from. And I think one of the things that I like, I of course came to Malaysia in 1992, and it was a very different country. It was a very different country then. We had monitor lizards, and we lived in, quite literally just down the road from where now KLCC is. And then we had monitor lizards in our house, and it was like this amazing, different reality than where we came from in Australia. And you see now how far those amazing urban centers of Malaysia, Penangs, Johors, and of course KL, Greater KL has now become a lifestyle city, if you ask me. Obviously, when we do get a chance to go out and eat, we have these wonderful lunch venues for our working lunch with Nordin. And as soon as the MCO is over, we'll do more of that. But one of the things that I've seen is the kind of certain areas of Malaysia that has grown and has started to have a life of its own. So the government starts the idea and then starts to see monitor lizards to train crashes. Actually, where that train crash was is probably quite close to where we stayed. We stayed in Pasarian, Hampshire, which was there was only 4 bungalows there. So now there's a multi-billion-dollar development. Unfortunate about the plane, the train crash. But we've seen the government has got it right on plenty of occasions. Oh, thanks, Michael. Don't get us all in trouble. But I think I think one of the things that we've seen is Malaysia has done so well for itself. Now it's expected to step up to the next level. How are you truly an Asian tiger, where you're head and shoulders with countries like South Korea and Singapore? These two. When we look at our rankings, we always say, oh, number 2 in ASEAN, number 2 in this. So we're always there, but we're picking up the silver medal. How do we defeat Singapore? Is it about defeating Singapore, or is it a different strategy? Is Singapore going to be Singapore and Malaysia should be Malaysia, and we have to run our own race now that we're at this level? What do you think, Bobby? I mean, you've got this amazing global perspective.
So I've got two perspectives, and one follows the other. First and foremost is, I think, what Malaysia has reflected over the last my 16 years in this country is the ability for the public and private sectors to collaborate. Right? Let's not worry about how effective those collaborations have been. I think they have been largely extremely effective. The seamlessness with which communications happen between both sides of that equation, probably there is no other developing country in the planet that I can say can kind of reflects that. And I think this is kudos to Malaysia, to the Malaysian people, to the policymakers, to the entrepreneurs, to the organizations. It is phenomenal. It is so easy to just walk into a government agency or to a ministry, have a meeting, have a chat, right? Nobody is judging anybody. See, what I think Malaysia needs to do is to take that to the next level, and maybe that's where we gotten caught up in the semantics of who owns what, and unfortunately, value gets diluted. The question you ask is interesting. What is so great about South Korea and Singapore? I mean, my view is this: they're not great. Big deal. So this is how a citizen would look at it, right? Singapore is wow. Everything is clean. Everything is nice. You don't have to lock your door. Everything is safe. Perfectly all right. But you're now having to spend, $5 on a piece of bread, on a loaf of bread. I mean, seriously, man, really? Is it seriously so? Do you have to really spend $5 on a loaf of bread? I think it's taking that imagination too far, right? And then, of course, we have all those programs around LDBs, HDBs. A country can do what it wants to do, what South Korea does, but South Korea is run by 15 people. That's all. I mean, it's a bunch of family businesses, right? They're not masquerading as a country. So is it with Singapore. If I'll be very candid, these are family businesses masquerading as countries. So I think Malaysia should stop its hang up with Singapore. I've told everybody in Nordin, when I spoke, I've told Michael as well, stop having this hang up about Singapore. You don't have to be better than Singapore. You have to be better than yesterday. That's all you have to be for your own people. If that means you have to take a path that has least trodden or it's never been trodden, so be it. Now, how do you measure that? What's the path? Malaysia is stuck in a middle income trap. Let's get that out of the way. And Malaysia's middle income trap also comes with your B40 problem. Can I have a B0? Right? If I take those two goals and give myself a 10-year roadmap and say, I will do whatever it takes, the battles I have to fight, the friends I have to lose, this time for pretenses and half measures is over, Nordin. I think when Malaysia has reached that level of maturity and competence to also be able to say, you know what, please, there are some things we don't like, we will not do it. 40 years ago, yeah, we didn't have much of a choice. We had to toe the line. But should Malaysia toe every single line today? I don't think so. So let's not underestimate ourselves. Of course, let's not overestimate ourselves and get killed in the process of saying, I should be better than Singapore every single morning. Please, let's stop that hang up. We are much more mature to do that.
The other thing I want to ask you, Bobby, I always ask this, and of course, this morning we had a bit of a glitch getting logged in, and we're having a good joke about cybersecurity and all this kind of stuff. And you've been talking a lot about cybersecurity for the WIF and MABC's online programs and a whole bunch of stuff. What do you see as the future opportunities of cybersecurity? And is this an area that Malaysia can excel in?
Okay, so let's take your second question first and let's get it out of the way. You don't have to excel in comparison to anybody. Everybody has to excel. You either get it right or you get it wrong, right? I think, okay, that's the other part that we need to stop having a hangover on is, are we better than someone else? You're either good or you're not, right? It's one or the other. See, cybersecurity, losing data, Nordin, losing data, you lose your phone number or you lose everything. You lost it, right? There is no half measures there. So let's stop these comparative hang-ups, right? And I think that applies to all sectors, not just the economic sectors with Singapore, but every single sector. So if we get that out of the way, then what are we left with as a solution is collaboration. Because the virtual world is not driven by boundaries, by national boundaries that we have on a map. Our thinking has to also be transboundary, right? They have to be cross boundaries. ASEAN has a cyber security framework, but I'm not sure if it is well implemented, even if it is well understood enough. Threat intelligence sharing is almost minimal. It's almost always triggered by an incident rather than as a norm. The first step is for the ASEAN countries to, stop, headbanging over, a variety of problems and trade, what we call trade agreements, and say, let's get our heads together around threat intelligence. Just share intelligence on a daily basis. We haven't gotten to it. We've been speaking about it for 7 years right now. If we get that right, 90% of your responsiveness components in each country will become proactive. Today, every single thing is reactive. And it's expensive. It is reactive, right? It's expensive because then it's a battle of averages. How many times are you avoiding and how many times are you getting hit? That's the first and foremost step at a regional level and at a national level. Of course, bring it down to a corporate level, companies have to really appreciate that it is a strategic initiative. It is not the IT manager's role to throw in a bunch of virus, right? What you call antivirus software. That education has to happen. I think our cybersecurity Malaysia is doing enough. Maybe they can do more. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when we try to bungkus, when we put all this digitalization in this era of COVID-19, what do you see as kind of the way forward? And as for the viewers out there who are watching us, as we also close off the session, especially like SMEs or those in the corporate sector, what are, after they've been highly motivated by today's talk, what are they going to do, and what should they do in the next few days?
Okay, 4 things. Number 1, talk to Cybersecurity Malaysia, Dato Aziz, and get the basic programs. They're all available for free. Just go and participate. It's an hour, it's a 2 hour. Let's get an understanding of it, right? Second, be ready to make the investments. See, it's not going to be that it's like my countrymen in India who always thought that just by drinking rasam, COVID is not going to impact them, and the largest number of deaths in the world are actually in India. So let's not be stupid and foolish, right? Let's get real. You have to understand what it means, and it doesn't matter that you cannot hide behind the tag of an SME anymore. I know we have had this conversation for a long time, right, Michael? 15 years. We are SMEs. We don't know. You have no choice. Do you want to survive or not? That's your only point. You want to survive? Go figure it out. Don't hide behind it or don't wait for someone to come and bail you out. That's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
That's the second part. Third part is, I think, hold up to the standards that will allow you to remain resilient. You cannot cut corners. You have to hold up to the standards of whether it is security, whether it's excellence, whatever be those standards. You got to hold up to the standards. And fourth, be ready for changes. You cannot keep on saying that, okay, in the 1970s, this was great. That's a great pub conversation, but it doesn't apply today. It's what you do today, it changes next month, right? So those few flexibilities alongside an acceptance of reality that we live in an extremely different world are what will get us off. Because this is not rocket science, Nordin. It is just that we are just either too reluctant to understand it, or we are too egoistic to think that it won't hit me. Both ways, we are in trouble, right?
Yeah, exactly. Bobby, I really want to appreciate all the time you've given us today, and thank you for coming on the show. I'm really looking forward to getting a chance to go and eat with you in person, and even though you're just down the road, and thank you for joining us today on a Working Lunch with Nordin, and we look forward to the next time we get you on the show.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your invitation. Lovely conversation, and hopefully nobody's pissed off with what I said.
I'm sure they know where to find you anyway. Yeah. So thank you very much, and thank you, Agnes, also for thanking our guest today. And we will see you at the next MABC networking event, whenever that is, virtual or otherwise. Thank you very much, Bobby.